Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed by Rebecca C Mandeville, MFT. Help and Hope for Adults in the Family Scapegoat Role. Chapter 6. Complex trauma in the scapegoated adult child. As illustrated in the previous chapter, FSA and CPTSD are closely related, whereas simple trauma refers to one single event which is obvious and definable, such as an accident or bodily assault. Complex trauma describes exposure to multiple traumatic events and the long-term impact of this exposure. It is therefore not surprising that children who were chronically scapegoated by their parents or other significant family members may be suffering from undiagnosed and untreated complex trauma as adults. Because family scapegoating abuse doesn't magically stop when the child matures into an adult, the scapegoating will most likely continue, resulting in the adult child being triggered and re-traumatized from repeated exposures to family members who continue to maltreat them, whether openly or covertly. Scapegoated adults who believe that the chronic maltreatment would end with the death of a parent may be shocked to discover that the abuse continues via a dominant family member, such as a sibling who adopts the false narrative promoted by the deceased parent that the FSA target is defective, crazy, a liar, a faker, or otherwise fundamentally bad. Lily, a client case study. The following case study serves as an example of how family scapegoating abuse symptoms may sometimes overlap with complex trauma. When Lily initiated psychotherapy services with me, she reported feeling anxious, lonely, hopeless, and lost. She experienced deep fears of being rejected and avoided dating as a result. She had difficulty trusting others and struggled to set boundaries, which she felt was negatively impacting her relationships with others, including with her team at work. Lily was especially worried because she was feeling increasingly defiant from others and numb and disconnected. Lily also shared she often had bad dreams in which she was taken hostage or was suddenly being shot at with no means of escaping or getting help. I can totally relate to all of this. She also experienced occasional panic attacks when visiting her parents and avoided seeing them as a result, and she felt guilt, embarrassment, and shame around this apparent loss of physiological and emotional control. During our intake session, I learned that Lily grew up with the knowledge that her father had been disappointed with her because she wasn't born a boy. When he verbally attacked her as a child by calling her stupid, ugly, and fat, she figured it was because he was upset she wasn't a boy, but some part of me knew she wasn't wasn't a boy, but some part of me knew I didn't deserve it even when I was very young, unquote. Her father also drank too much at times and would become hostile and irrational, screaming at both her and her mother for various imagined offenses until he passed out. Because she was an only child, Lily felt the weight of her father's disappointment more acutely as she got older. Her father's active psycho-emotional and verbal abuse toward her gradually turned into disinterest and neglect by the time she entered adolescence. She did feel somewhat supported and loved by her mother, but couldn't help but believe that her mother must be disappointed in her as well, given she couldn't have any more children and her father had so desperately wanted a son to carry on the family name. Psychoeducation and assessing overlapping symptoms. After reviewing Lily's presenting issues and symptoms during the intake process, I explained to her that her father's chronic emotional neglect and blaming and shaming behaviors, including his disparaging comments about her appearance and his disinterest in her as she got older, were in fact forms of covert and overt psycho-emotional abuse. This initially surprised her, but also gave her a sense of relief. I thought there was something wrong with me, that I just couldn't get over my childhood. I never realized that what I went through was abusive. I thought abuse was mostly physical. Somehow having a name for what happened to me makes me feel better. Later, I let Lily know that it might be wise to assess her for symptoms of complex trauma, CPTSD, concerning her having been mentally and emotionally abused as a child. Lily expressed confusion, replying that she thought PTSD was only for people who fought in wars and things like that. Lily's response was understandable and also typical of clients that have never heard of CPTSD and are not aware of how it might apply to them. I explained to Lily that complex PTSD differs from PTSD in that it acknowledges repeated and prolonged traumatic events experienced in childhood from which there is no escape, which is often applicable to the scapegoat child's experience of their dysfunctional, rejecting family environment. In Lily's case, learning that what she had experienced in childhood constituted abuse and having her symptoms of complex trauma identified, assessed, and validated allowed her to view herself and her mental health challenges with compassion. At the same time, understanding that she was an adult survivor of child abuse and had symptoms of CPTSD instilled her with a sense of hope that recovery was possible. This in turn allowed her to commit to an efficacious, trauma-informed treatment pathway designed to address both family scapegoating abuse, past and present, and her symptoms of complex trauma. In Chapter 7, next, I'll explore scapegoating as related to betrayal trauma theory, BTT.